The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to the September 27th edition of the Opinionators. I am Larry Deani, and the Opinionators is a political opinion program staffed by a panel of experts who, although they don't speak officially for the mainstream political parties, certainly reflect their views. So let's meet them. And they are Ron Corsini, right in the middle of the pack, representing the Liberal Party. Hello, Ron.
So happy to be here, Larry.
And next to Ron is Tara Crugnale. Tara is, of course, a die-hard conservative.
And more official than you know, Larry.
And more official than I know. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And Alex, of course, Alex Johnstone, representing the views of the NDP party. Are you official as well?
Sure, today.
All right. Well, and you're always dressed in official colors anyway. So let's get right to it because we've got some very interesting topics. And the first one, of course, has to do with the fact that, Ron, this one's to you, the fact that the Liberals are imposing a wage freeze on all public sector workers. It was first the teachers, the doctors, all in the name of austerity, of course, and now it's everybody who works in the public sector. But these are traditional supporters of the Liberal Party. Who is the Liberal Party trying to get votes from by doing this?
Well, I think the Liberal Party is trying to get votes from everyone out there who is within reason, who has, who can think straight over this whole austerity program. We are in a big problem and we have to tighten our belts. And why not the public sector workers? There are well-paid jobs, even on a 2-year freeze. They're still making a good income. The teachers are having to go through it, and now them. So I don't see the big problem.
Well, Tara, it seems like the Liberals are stealing a page off your party's book.
They're still not working fast enough. Dwight Duncan suggested that they were just in talks and consultation in order to move this forward, number one. Number two, they would leave the police and firefighters out of this deal. Now, there are about 1.3 million people that work for the public sector when you include everyone. And I think that all of them need to be included in these austerity measures. Plus, we want these things to be, we want the freezes to happen now. The Liberals are suggesting that some of these freezes wouldn't take place for 2 or 3 years, and we just don't have the time. We have a $15 billion deficit, and we have to get going now.
And Alex, I know that the NDP is not going to be in favor of this, or are they?
Well, absolutely not. I think that the assumption that's being made here is that they are all cushy jobs, and certainly there's many public service workers that are making just $15 an hour, which is very difficult when you do a wage freeze. If you're looking to start raising a family, buying a home, how do you do that on $15 an hour? So I think that certainly unions and the NDP are concerned about that. The other assumption here is that it's public sector workers and public services that cause the deficit, when it's not. If you look at the rates that public service workers have been making and their increases since 1981, there's been less than a 5% raise. Yet, when you look at corporate tax cuts, they've gone up by 30% since the year 2000.
Yeah, but they create jobs.
Yes, exactly.
But they don't create jobs.
Hang on, one at a time. Ron,
but how would the NDP, what would your solution be? To raise taxes, to cut corporate taxes, to increase corporate taxes? Where would this money come from? So you have to come. You have to come to some conclusion.
We've taken out an enormous deficit. We're borrowing money to pay for corporate tax cuts. We can't afford it anymore.
But they are creating jobs.
For the past 9 years, the Dalton McGuinty Liberals have been pandering to their largest voting bloc, which would be people that work for the public sector. They keep saying yes to every wage hike, and it has to stop. And you know what? When you have so many people bringing in that much money, and all that money is coming from the same finite funding, we cannot afford it. We've got, healthcare costs, education, homelessness, all sorts of things. And I don't know how many are making $15 an hour, but I can guarantee there are a lot making $50 and $60 an hour.
It's give and take. It's give and take. And you know what? For a long time, you said that the government was giving. and they were giving very generously to everyone in the public
generously,
sector.
and
Everyone in the
getting
public
caught
sector,
up.
You look at
because
the
we were
corporate
doing
tax
well.
cuts,
you know.
Now's
Ontario
the time
has
to take
now
back a little.
some of the lowest taxes in the world, you know, we have to be looking at the fact that we can't afford these. Yet we're making all kinds of austerity measures against the middle class. You keep cutting the middle
Alex,
class, and there won't be any left.
But Alex, the government has said that they are not, because of Andrew Horwath's insistence, they're not going to go through with reducing taxes at the corporate level. That's not good enough?
Well, we paused it there, but we still can't afford that. I think that we really need to be looking at, if we're going to be applying austerity, it has to be, everyone needs to be, I guess, making their fair contribution.
Yeah,
and I
we
don't
are.
see that from the
Alex,
corporate
Alex,
sector.
I just feel like
Every
the
sector
NDP
is.
continue like a one-trick pony. Everything is about corporate tax cuts.
And everything for you is about taking cuts from working class people,
That
from
is
the
not
middle
true.
class.
We
All right, now
They
listen,
keep going
listen,
to the
we
middle
take it
class
from
and trying to
everywhere
cut
because
their
it's necessary.
jobs.
Panel, I'm just going to interrupt because we do have other topics, and the lines have been very clearly drawn. I'm sure we've not heard the end of this. But let's come to you on this one, Alex, because it has to do with the war that, at least the NDP would say, the war against teachers, that McGuinty seems to have won, at least in the legislature. Except locally, the teachers have taken a strike vote, in spite of the fact that they can't go on strike, just to show their solidarity. 97%, I believe, is the number, voted in favor of a strike if a deal cannot be reached with the public board. Symbolic gesture. But by the same token, has it lowered even more the relationship between the Liberals and the teachers?
Well, Larry, I think it's very sad that you yourself, as a well-known Liberal, describe the situation as the war on teachers. And that's exactly what it is. But it's really sad when we hear Liberals calling it that. I think that what's important for the public to know that although a strike vote has taken place, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a strike. This is standard operating practice. What the teachers are doing is they are acting as though Bill 115 hasn't taken place. They are just going through the motions, because if they weren't, if they didn't do what your standard operating procedure, then they would get dinged for it when they go to the courts to challenge Bill 115. And
I know
okay.
that the Liberal government.
Yeah, well, no, Tara, it's up to you, but let me just make clear that I think I said, according to the NDP, it's a war on teachers. I didn't say according
correct.
to Larry Diani, but go ahead, Tara.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that it's a war. Well, actually, maybe it has been a little bit of a war on teachers up until this point. Now that Dwight Duncan is suggesting that these measures, austerity measures, would go across the board for all civil servants, perhaps then teachers could take it with a grain of salt. But understandably, if everyone is being treated the same way, it wasn't fair just to single out teachers. But these strike votes are concerning to me. There were another two that happened yesterday. Both boards voted in favor of a strike as well. But I'm just trying to understand where the teachers think that they're going to be getting support. I don't think it's going to be from the parents. I think that this is going to create a little bit more animosity with the students as well, and it's just an uncomfortable situation. I don't see either side backing down, and I don't know how much further the relationship between the Liberals and the traditional voting base of the teachers can deteriorate.
Ron, I think the relationship has gone maybe for a generation.
But then
or
who
not.
are they going to vote for?
I believe so. I mean, for the time being and for the next 2 years, it's going to be very upsetting for teachers in the province to ever re-embrace the party again. But this party had to do that. And you just said, it's not only the teachers that have not...
Well, so far it is until they actually
but he always
bring these austerity
said
measures.
that everyone is going to be affected. All public servants are going to be affected. So it's not just the teachers that the government is going after. And the teachers have had it good for the last long while. And now it's just for the next 2 years, they're going to have to tighten their belts
so I
like
think
everyone
the
else.
philosophy is tick everybody off and then dilute just one sector. I'm
And
not sure
hope the
that's gonna work
minority
politically.
government holds.
I'm not sure it's going to work politically, but nevertheless, let's.
But there's a lot more people that vote than other than just the public sector and teachers.
It's
okay?
quite a
In fact, the
chunk.
polls are
It's quite a
showing
chunk.
support for this.
One final comment on that, which is, of course, this week we saw the 3 major auto companies sign a deal with
great.
CAW. And that just goes to show that you don't have to force through legislation. All you need to do is respect the bargaining process. Respect.
Yeah, but those are private corporations that are making money.
Yeah.
We're dealing with governments that are losing money.
We do not need to be stripping people of their labor rights. We should certainly, what we should be doing is supporting the natural process, and school boards could have worked that out.
The Liberals,
we didn't need the Liberals to step in
they
and step on our feet.
I think we need to move along. Tara, you've got the word on this one.
All right.
And this one has to do with the gas plant. You know, we've just found out that $40 million is what it cost to relocate that gas plant in Oakville. You know, people have almost admitted that, yes, politics played a part in that. And of course, that continues to give the government a black eye and Mr. McGuinty a black eye. Are you happy about that?
It's despicable. I cannot believe that to save 1 or 2 seats to secure a majority, which they didn't even do, they managed to squander $40 million of our money. And I think it's a slap in the face to say, well, we don't know if it's going to be hydro users or taxpayers that are going to pay for it, because, hey, we're one and the same. And if you ever look at your hydro bill and you look at all the extras that are on there except for the hydro, it's ridiculous as it is. So I don't want to stand for this, but unfortunately we're over a barrel because we voted in this government, and so we're going to be paying it.
Ron, is it democracy or is it politics?
I look at it as being democracy. It was the will of the people, and the government followed the will of the people. The people of Oakville did not want that plant in their midst, and the government did what they had to do. It did cost a lot of money. The government admitted that it was excessive, but we have to move on, and the will of the people prevailed in Oakville.
What's your perspective, Alex?
Let me tell you what happened, Larry. McGuinty's government tried to force these power projects onto 2 communities for over 6 years. And at the end of 6 years, when we hit an election, that's when they decide to pull the plug, when they decide that when they realize they're going to be losing some seats. And it wasn't just $40 million. It's actually going to be costing us $230 million, said all and be all, when you cancel the projects, when you start to rebuild in a new location. There's all kinds of different costs involved. This, you know, I always thought that there was Elections Canada regulations over how much money you could spend on an election, but apparently you can spend $200 million just to save a seat.
You know, I was involved in the with the PCs in Oakville during the last election, and up until that point that they canceled the gas plant, we were really sure that we were going to be able to take that seat. I mean, Kevin Flynn was sweating, but it was that decision that saved Oakville for the Liberals, and well,
so
we're all paying for it.
Was it a good move then for the Liberals?
They were very wily, and sure, it got them a seat, but again, it didn't get them the majority, so they'd be in the same position.
All right. Well, this one is for you, Ron, and it has to do with a really interesting case in the federal prisons, where an inmate with hepatitis C is suing the government because the government is not allowing needle exchange programs. So there's an inmate with hepatitis C, and the inmate is saying, look, if we had clean needles, then I would be okay and not be infected. The government, the federal conservative government, is saying, we have zero tolerance in prison, so why are we going to be hypocritical in allowing needle exchange programs when we don't want drugs to be used of any kind at all?
How do the drugs get in there in the first place? If the drugs are in there in the first place, then there should be a needle exchange program. There's a health issue here, and you got a population of people incarcerated that are going to become sick, and then we, as a taxpayer, are going to have to look after their health. So stop the drugs from going in the first place, and they won't have to share needles.
Alex?
I tend to agree with that. I think that there would be huge liability if the government was suddenly to start, exchanging needles. What if someone got hurt with that? Then we would be getting sued again. I think that what is that issue here is that the drugs are getting into the prison. We need, it's not just saying that we're not going to be providing a needle exchange. It's looking at how are the drugs getting in there in the first place. I think it's, it is very difficult because there is such a market demand inside the prisons for the drugs. But I don't agree with a needle exchange, but perhaps looking at something like the safer injection site like they have in Vancouver. So at least then...
inside a prison?
why not? At least then we're monitoring it, and the needles never actually have to leave.
No, I don't agree with monitoring it, allowing it at all. Needles are weapons as well, so we would never allow weapons into our prisons. We're not supposed to reward people by giving them these needles. They're not supposed to be doing drugs in the first place. Perhaps that's why they're in jail in the first place. We have to be weaning them off of these narcotics. The fact that they get into prisons.
How?
I don't know. Obviously, it's through guests that are coming in the door, or I don't know who. I'm not going to start pointing fingers, but definitely whoever it is that is caught bringing drugs into prison should be charged with a felony and convicted and put in that same prison.
I think the only thing that I was disappointed is that I didn't hear anything from Vic House in terms of what the government was going to do to address, preventing the drugs getting into the prison. Because obviously what's happening right now isn't enough.
Well, but the point is the suit against them right now is to provide the needles. So I think that's just where they stopped with the conversation.
Well, the interesting thing, though, for me anyway, is that we don't allow drugs out in the street, and yet we do have needle exchange programs on our streets as well. We got to recognize the reality that these things are going to happen, even if we don't want them to happen, and we take the precaution of treating health issues as opposed to simply ideological positions.
Or arresting those people and getting them the help that they need. Because
They
clearly need
do,
help.
they do, and that goes on and on by our police department. I mean, it's an ongoing fight is fighting drugs in the city, and drugs is the scourge of the city, and people break into homes because of it to get their next
It needs to be
fix.
addressed more as a health issue, because right now we're just looking at it as a legal, as a criminal matter, and we really need to be looking at it as a health issue.
Absolutely.
It's costing us millions, actually billions. It's a lot of money when someone has a drug problem, and a lot of emotional hurt with families.
Indeed.
It's widespread.
Well, you know what, panel, good opinions, and we are now at the lightning round section of our program. And of course, the lightning round is where we run through one comment each, a number of topics, and then I will talk about something as well and invite you to participate. So this one is for you, Ron, and we're going to go Ron, Tara, and Alex for each of the lightning round topics. And this one has to do with Canada and Britain sharing embassies, we're being told by the federal government. Now, we are obviously have a long history with Britain, but we're different countries. And yet, they're saying to save some dollars and to create some efficiencies, we are going to be sharing embassies in key locations around the world. Is this to save money, or is Harper really saying, let's go back to our colonial past?
What do we need to share an embassy for? I mean, we are a power in ourselves. Canada is one of the world-leading powers in the world. Everyone looks to us. Now we have to share an embassy with another country? No, I like the royal family and the whole bit, but that doesn't mean that I have to share an apartment with them.
All right. Tara?
I think that it's an excellent move to cut costs. Just from personal experience, knowing in Hamilton, when there was an Italian embassy here, it was costing upwards of $1 million a year to maintain one location. So it's just not feasible for countries to go across the board. Yes, we need to have an identity in each country, and if there's going to be any roommate, the Brits would be the one I'd choose.
But are we going to be overshadowed by the Brits?
I'm personally in favor of this. I think that, as Tara highlighted, that it makes fiscal sense. That said, though, I hope that Harper's government is taking into consideration that we don't want services to be diminished when it's being shared by, there's the same staff taking over the service. Are they going to be familiar with both British and Canadian laws in terms of helping immigrants come into the country? So as long as service doesn't get diminished, then I am supportive of it.
All right. Ron, this one again is for you, and this one has to do with the Prime Minister Harper yet again shunning the United Nations. He's receiving an award. All the world leaders are going to the UN, but Mr. Harper is not. And he's saying because he's receiving an award, or is there more to it than that?
I don't know whether there's more to it than that. I'm embarrassed as a Canadian that he did not address the United Nations. I mean, how could he shun the United Nations in favor of going to get this award for himself? It just doesn't make sense to me. He should have been at the United Nations. Canada, like I said before, is a world power. Everyone looks to us, and we should act that way.
Tara, of course you agree that the United Nations is important and the Prime Minister should have been there, right?
You know what? I feel that that Prime Minister Stephen Harper, by him not being there, it is an indication of the way we are moving with our foreign policy. And our foreign policy is Canadian made and delivered, and the UN has been a tricky body to deal with since its inception, and it is not. It doesn't do much. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and so I think we are sending a representative there, but that's the way it is.
All right. Well, there is a message then that the Prime Minister is sending. What's your take on it?
What kind of message is that? Essentially flipping the rest of the world the bird? Like, this is...
Yeah.
Well, that's what I read into it. You know, out of the entire time that Harper has been Prime Minister, he's only presented to the UN twice. And one of them was to ask for a seat on the Security Council, which he was denied, and rightly so. If you don't put in the work, then you don't get it.
And if we don't put in the money, that's another one.
He's using this as, you know, it's a taxpayer-funded trip just so he can go collect his award. And that's pretty shameful.
All right. We're getting into discussion. Ron, again to you, and this one is an exciting one, at least if you're a Liberal, and it has to do with federal Liberals and Justin Trudeau throwing his hat in the ring, running for his dad's old job as leader of the Liberal Party. There's one poll that shows that he could actually win an election. You don't believe that?
Well, I do believe that, because I believe that the Liberals have finally gotten it right in picking a leader that could resonate with all Canadians out there. He has the charisma, and believe you me, charisma matters, and he has the smarts, and he could pull this off, and I think he will bring the party back to where it once was.
Are the ads being formulated as we speak, Tara?
You know, I still think he suffers from foot and mouth disease. He's had a number of missteps that his father would never have been befallen. I don't think that he has the charisma and stamina of his father just yet. It's possible that he will in the future, but I fear for him that if he comes into it too early, he'll be seen as a one-trick pony, and if he loses the leadership, he'll be tarnished goods.
Fuddle-duddle Trudeau never stuck his foot in his mouth, did he, Alex?
That wasn't that one.
Yeah.
I think that the Liberals right now, they need a hero to swoop in and save the party. And they're looking for that, and they're hoping that Justin is it. I think that Justin still has a lot of proving to do before he can convince the rest of Canada that he would make a strong leader. And so I guess we'll see as the weeks wear on whether he can actually do that.
And we hope that others join the fray as well. And I mean we as Canadians, because the party would be strengthened by that. But listen, it's my turn, and I want to talk about something that happened in Hamilton last week. And you know, panel, that Hamiltonians met downtown last week to take back the night. And we know that this is a traditional march held by those who want to publicly state that the streets belong to everyone at all hours of the day or night. These are peace-loving individuals who are making a stand. And I think that we've come to expect this and applaud this move. No violence is allowed anywhere, certainly not on the streets of Hamilton. I was surprised to be reminded that men were not allowed to march. They were disallowed. They were prohibited from marching. They could stand at the side and cheer the marchers and support them that way, but not take part in the march. I tweeted my surprise when I learned that and got some interesting responses. Some men supported the organizers and the fact that it was a women's only march, and other men begrudged the fact and bemoaned the fact that they couldn't be there to actually support by marching along with the women against violence. Panel, was it the right thing to do, Ron?
Well, no, I think it was the wrong thing to do, because there are men that are being attacked here on the streets of Hamilton also. It's not just women. And we want our streets safe for everyone in the city, not just for one particular. I would have liked to have marched with them and marched for peace and tranquility at any time in the city of Hamilton. What's the problem?
I believe that having women march on their own is more symbolic than anything else. It's about women taking back the night. Ron, I accept that men are also victims of violence, but the majority tend to be women. We are physically the weaker sex. Sorry, it's true. And so things happened to us, and I think that it was important that the women marched, and the men could definitely stand on the side and encourage and support. And I wonder, Larry, those that were bemoaning the fact that they couldn't march, were they even going to go in the first place, or the fact that they couldn't go, that's why now all of a sudden they wanted to go?
Alex?
I think we need.
I think you were there.
I was there. And I think we need to be looking at what Take Back the Night is all about. For so many women, certainly there's violence happening in their homes, out on the streets. But the whole idea of it is that women aren't safe alone. When our daughters are walking home from school or after sports games, we tell them that we'll come pick them up because we don't want them riding the transit alone. We tell women not to walk alone at night. We tell women that they're not safe. So this is about a whole bunch of women walking the streets together, taking back the night, taking back the streets, in a symbolic gesture, but also in a very real gesture that together we are safe.
All right. Let's let that be the last word, and I'm glad that it was a successful event. And let me thank our panelists, first of all, for sharing their opinions with us, and the viewers for watching. This has been the Opinionators on Cable 14. Tune in next week at this time when our panel will once again weigh in on important issues of the day.
Tara Crunali's Hair by Ludi Mamoda Hair and Aesthetic Studio, 169 James Street North in downtown Hamilton.